And so we finally probably had a phone call March, April, so 3 or 4 months afterwards. Like, I think it could be there. It would require so much change on both our parts that I don't know. And part of me thinks, okay, my religion requires that you continue to make a marriage work. And I deeply believe in my faith. And I have been at so much at peace that I don't know how to reconcile that. So that's where my debate with myself is all the time, because I know I'm happy. I don't want him to come back.
Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Yesterday, I uploaded a video about Kody Brown, and I said to you that she was separated, not divorced, and that she still was technically the property of Kody. And I shared with you some documents from the AUB that outline how women are viewed within this group. I also shared with you some sermons and some documents about what the requirements are for plural marriage within this group. I understand that on YouTube and even on this channel, there has been discussion about Janelle and the family being excommunicated and that they're no longer in their faith. But that's actually false. And after my video yesterday, where I actually explained to you that if Janelle wants to actually get a release from Kody, she would have to go to her church and request it. In my comments, which were filled and littered with, but she's excommunicated, she doesn't believe. That actually made me go back to the tell-all where she flat out said to Suki that she still believes in her faith deeply. She still believes in plural marriage. She still has a testimony of plural marriage.
My religion requires that you continue to make a marriage work. And I deeply believe in my faith. And I have been at so much at peace that I don't know how to reconcile that. So that's where my debate with myself is all the time, because I know I'm happy. I don't want him to come back.
She still believes in her church and her faith. Robin still believes in her faith. And Kody still believes in his faith. And there was some questions because some of you were like, well, Janelle isn't a believer anymore. She is. She said it on the tell-all. And I'm not, unless she's lying, which they do lie sometimes, she said it on the tell-all. Now, unless Janelle is just flat out lying and saying that she believes in her faith and she's just lying, that could be one thing. But on the tell-all, she said she was separated from Kody, but she believed in her faith, and so that was where she was at. Like, she sticks it through, but they're separated. She doesn't want him to come back. A divorce was never an option. The very last thing that Kody said to Suki was that he hoped to reconcile with Janelle and get back to a sweet place with her. He didn't want things to end. That was the last thing he said, and he still believed in plural marriage. So then I got a message from someone who's, again, well-connected from the AUB and had some insider information about the Browns' so-called excommunication, why they say they're excommunicated, but the truth is they're not. So let's dive into Kody Brown's biggest lie yet. Before we do, can you do me a big favor and give this video a thumbs up? Please subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button down there. Click on the bell so that you never miss a video and you get notified of all of our new videos. And leave a comment if you have something to say and share this video with your friends. So a lot of people were confused in my last video because they said, well, Janelle is excommunicated. And listen, even I have said on this channel that they're excommunicated. That's because Miss Gwendolyn says that they're excommunicated and Kody says they're excommunicated, and they said on the tell-all that they don't go to that church anymore. But Kody and Robin were acting like they were still members of the church and that you'd have to go to the church for a release. So here's the actual truth. Kody Brown and his sister wives were in talks with TLC to get the show. At no point during that time was Kody in trouble with the church for going on the show. There was no higher priesthood meetings, and according to the source that I talked to, both publicly and privately in high priesthood meetings, there was never a discussion about them not being able to go on the show. There might have been people disagreeing about whether or not it was a good idea, and there might have been some issues with whether or not they wanted to be associated with it, but there was never a discussion about if they go on it, they're kicked out. So as the show started going on, the church was split. Some people didn't agree with them being a part of the show, and other people didn't care. And some people were on the show saying that some people were in the church saying they didn't agree, others agreed. But either way, they were still members of the church. And they moved from Utah to Las Vegas. And in depositions from their, in documents and affidavits that they filed in court, they all admitted that they had to travel back and forth from Nevada to Utah to attend church functions. So the entire time that they were in Nevada, they were going back and forth and going back to spend time with their church. They discussed how expensive it was to make that, and it was a reason why they were suing, because they were like, well, we've lost our church community, and you should have never been able to do an investigation against us because constitutional rights. You violated my constitutional rights. Anyways, they lost the lawsuit, but there's literally documents where, throughout it, and it wasn't ended until 2017. The Browns are saying, we travel back and forth to Utah to attend church functions, to see our family, to see our church members. And every time we go, it's X amount of dollars. It's expensive, but we still go. So at some point, though, publicly, they start talking about how, well, they're not really members of their church anymore, and they don't really attend the church anymore. Well, in 2015 and 14, a allegation came out against a newly appointed prophet, Lynn Thompson. Lynn Thompson, who was the father of Rosemary Williams, who, if you remember, My 5 Wives, Brady Williams and his 5 wives, who actually came from the same church, the Apostolic United Brethren. They had recently left the church. And Rosemary wrote a blog after her father was appointed prophet, and she disclosed that he had SA'd her as a child. And then other people from the church came forward with similar allegations against Lynn. This press was horrible for the sister wives, because their prophet is being accused of child SA, something that the Browns claimed on the show was not involved in their church. I want to note that Lynn Thompson was never charged for these crimes, and the AUB publicly said that they were doing an internal investigation to verify and substantiate these claims, but nothing happened, and Lynn passed away and was served as prophet until his death. Lynn Thompson is not the only person from this church that has had scandals like this, but it was in the middle of this that the show is on the air. My 5 Wives ends up getting canceled after Rosemary's public declaration about what was said about Lynn, and they don't have enough drama for the show. And so the only way for Kody and the wives to continue moving forward publicly was for them to try to separate from the church publicly and claim that they were no longer involved in the church. And the church could also publicly sort of disconnect from the Browns, so there wouldn't be a uneasiness or unrest within the, community of, well, everyone thinks that they're part of our church and they're not a part of our church and blah, blah, blah. But it benefited Kody and the wives to disconnect from a scandal, even if they technically hadn't really disconnected. During this period of time, my sources say it's very likely that the Browns were still paying tithing, and even to this day, they claim that the Browns could still be paying tithing. Another point that's interesting here is that there's no typical formal excommunication that takes place. And because it's a public entity, my source said that literally any public church cannot prohibit someone from attending a public event. And because they're a public church, they have public services that are literally open to the public, and any single Brown family member could go to any one of these services anytime. There are private meetings that the Brown family could be invited to and attend. And I want to note that Bonnie Barber, who was Mary's mother, was buried in a funeral cemetery in Rocky Ridge, Utah, which is an entire town that is operated and owned by the Apostolic United Brethren. Generally, once someone has been excommunicated, and it's an informal excommunication, I'm told, there's not like really documents, there's not like a formal process per se that excommunicates someone, I was told. But if they were so-called apostates, which is how they portrayed it to the public, like they'd become apostates of their church, if they were so-called apostates of their church, they would not have been able to interact with other people from the church. That means family members that they have inside the church would have cut contact with them. Once someone is an apostate, they typically lose access to almost every single family member and all of their friends. But the Browns maintained contact with the church and with key members of the church, namely Bonnie Barber, Miss Mary Brown's late mother. So she passed away a couple years ago. Bonnie Barber was running Mary's bed and breakfast. Bonnie Barber also served as the registered agent and officer member of nearly every company that is owned by the Apostolic United Brethren. Records that I've obtained from the state of Utah, Bonnie Barber is listed as a registered agent and a member of companies that are owned under the umbrella of the Apostolic United Brethren, including The Truth, Truth Publishing, Star of Truth Publishing, and the Apostolic United Brethren. She was the registered agent, meaning she was the person that filed the documents for this company, and she's listed on the company records, and she served in this position for the company until her death in 2020. If Mary Brown and her brother and her wives and Kody and all of them were disconnected from the church, the woman that is literally the registered agent of the church and managing the church business records would have zero to do with them, because they would be apostates. Not only did we hear about Bonnie's funeral on the show, Bonnie was featured on the show numerous times because she worked at Mary's bed and breakfast. She was working for Mary up until her death and was the business registered agent for literally every single company that the Apostolic United Brethren had registered. So if they were apostates, Bonnie would have cut them off. If they were apostates, Bonnie never would have been on the show. If they were apostates, Rex Allred, who is Christine Brown's dad, would not speak to her. So Rex Allred, her father, maintains and is still a part of the church, or at least he was, as of like recently. If they were apostates, Robin Brown would not have any communication with her mother. And Robin maintains communications not only with her mother, but her siblings that are still a part of this church. When her dad died, who was a member of the church, Robin was there helping with his funeral, putting together his estate. So there's no question that they have never been kicked out of this church. There's no question that they are still interacting in this church. And to just add one more layer to prove to you that they've never been kicked out, Kody Brown, his best friend Kyle Henderson, was facing domestic violence charges in the state of Utah, felonies. Kody Brown in 2019 was slated to be an expert witness for fundamentalism and the AUB. He was going to be an expert witness in counter to Kristen Decker's testimony about the AUB. Kyle Henderson was a bishop, and his sons are still members of the church. His son, Nick Henderson, is actually one of the youth group like leaders. So he runs the youth program. He's hanging out with Kyle. Bonnie's on the show, and Christine still talks to her dad. This family has never been kicked out of the show, out of the church, which is why Robin and Kody are telling Christine that she needs to go to the church for a release. Christine has left the church. Christine does not believe anymore. And that I was actually able to verify. She does not go to the church anymore. She's not affiliated with the church anymore. But the rest of them are. I don't know how frequently they go to the church. I don't know if they ever go to services. There's like literally churches all over that they can attend. They have branches in various parts of Utah. They're 4 hours away from St. George. They have so many different branches. They could go to a church function if they wanted to go to a church function. So long story short, the Browns have never been excommunicated from this church. That's why they were spending so much time talking about the release. And yet Miss Christine's like, well, we're not members of that church. We don't go to that church anymore. Well, Kody has said, we're not members of that church. We don't go to that church anymore. We're excommunicated, but they're not. They're not excommunicated. They did that as a way to separate from the church, and they still believe, and they still could be tithing to a church that is not only promoting white supremacy and a master white race, but massive homophobia and hateful rhetoric about women, and having men speak to youth about becoming sister wives.
If you're asking about a man who is already married and has a family, then when you're talking to the council, okay, so yeah, if you're asking about somebody who's already married, young ladies, and that would be, well, young or old, the council member generally would say, well, let me talk with him, and then I'll get back with you. And then once he gets back with you, well, either way, on both cases, whether they're married or not, then you can set up the meeting to meet and talk with the person directly. Whew, that's scary. For a girl to ask, as it is for a boy, young or old, you might become interested in a man. Perhaps you've watched the way he conducts his life, treats his family, wives, parents, siblings, children, and friends, and you desire to know it is the will of the Lord to pursue this interest. Remember that when you're courting somebody, girls, to hold to a standard that you would want your husband to hold himself to with future sister wives.
Telling youth how to approach a married man if they want to marry a married man. But don't do it until you're 18. But the only way you'll get into heaven is if you have sister wives. It's gross. So the Browns lied yet again, and they are still allegedly part of this church and have never been excommunicated, which is why Robin and Kody wanted to send Christine for a release. Does it bother you to know that they lied about all of this? Or is it just one more, well, they lie about everything? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.